On a freezing winter morning in Portland, a struggling seamstress walked into a small diner hoping to buy a cheap meal. But when she saw an elderly homeless woman shivering outside in the cold, she rushed over and spent every last dollar she had to buy the woman a warm meal. What she didn't know was that this single act of kindness would spark a miracle, reuniting a family torn apart for 5 years and changing her life and her entire community forever. Before we dive deeper into this story, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories every day. It was 3 a.m., and Jasmine Washington had counted the money 23 times. Her fingers moved across the crumpled bills spread on the kitchen table. 3 20s, 2 10s, a 5, a handful of ones. She counted again, slower this time, hoping the numbers would somehow change. $743, the same as the last 22 times. The apartment was freezing. Outside, snow fell thick and silent over Portland, Oregon. Inside, Jasmine's breath came out in small clouds. The heating had been broken for 3 weeks now. She couldn't afford to fix it. She looked at the papers surrounding the money. A bright pink eviction notice. Final warning stamped across the top in red. Payment due $2,800. Deadline January 15th. 3 days away. Next to it, a red electricity bill marked overdue. And there, face down like she couldn't bear to look at it again, Zara's rejection letter from the state scholarship program. Jasmine's hands trembled as she picked up the letter one more time. We regret to inform you that Zara Washington has not been selected for the full academic scholarship. Her GPA of 3.85 falls 0.15 points below the required 4.0 threshold. Point 15. Her baby sister's future was denied by point 15. Jasmine pressed her palms against her eyes. Don't cry. Crying doesn't pay bills. Crying doesn't keep the lights on. But God, she was so tired. She thought about Mama's Touch, the small tailor shop on Maple Street that her mother had opened 30 years ago. The shop Jasmine had inherited 2 years ago after her grandmother died. Died because they couldn't afford the good insurance. Died because the hospital made them wait 4 hours in the ER. Died because the receptionist looked at them and saw poor black family and decided they could wait a little longer. By the time they took Grandma Rosa back, it was too late. The hospital bills came anyway. $80,000 for a woman who died in their waiting room. Jasmine sold everything she could, but she kept the shop. It was all she had left of her family. Her mother killed in a factory explosion when Jasmine was 19. Her father gone in the same blast. Her grandmother, stolen by a broken system. Now it was just her and Zara. And in 3 days they'd lose the shop too. Jasmine looked at the eviction notice again. She'd been 4 months behind on rent. Mr. William Henderson, her landlord, had been patient at first. Then he got tired of waiting. Business is business, Miss Washington, he'd said last week, his voice flat and cold. I have bills to pay too. She'd begged, actually begged. On the verge of tears in her own shop while he stood there in his expensive coat, checking his watch like she was wasting his time. He didn't care. Nobody cared. The shop made maybe $20 a day now, sometimes less. Yesterday, $9. The day before, 15. She couldn't remember the last time she'd made more than 30. The rent was $1,800 a month, plus utilities, plus supplies. She was drowning. And no matter how hard she swam, the water kept rising. Jasmine stood up and walked to Zara's bedroom. She pushed the door open quietly. Her 16-year-old sister was asleep, curled under 2 blankets, her textbook still spread across the bed. Straight A student, GPA 3.85. I wanted to be a social worker. I wanted to help people. Just like Grandma Rosa taught us, Jasmine thought. Help people. Be kind. Every stitch is an act of hope, but hope didn't pay rent. Jasmine closed the door softly and went back to the kitchen. She picked up the $743 and put it in an envelope. Then she grabbed her thin coat, the zipper was broken, held together with a safety pin, and looked at the clock. 6 a.m. The shop opened at 7. Just get through today, she told herself. 3 more days, you'll figure something out. You have to. But she had no idea how. At 7 that morning, Jasmine unlocked the door to Mama's Touch. Snow covered the sidewalk. She grabbed the broom and swept it away, her breath steaming in the cold air. The sign above the door read Mama's Touch. Alterations and repairs since 1995 in fading yellow letters. Inside, the shop smelled like fabric and old wood. Sunlight caught the dust floating through the air. Jasmine sat at her grandmother's ancient Singer sewing machine and waited. No customers came. At 10 a.m., Mrs. Martha Thompson shuffled in, her coat dusted with snow. She was a regular, a kind elderly white woman who always smiled. "Morning, Jasmine honey, is my dress ready?" Jasmine held up the finished work. She'd repaired a torn hem and taken in the waist. "Good as new, Mrs. Thompson." Mrs. Thompson examined the repair, nodding. "Beautiful as always. How much?" $6. Mrs. Thompson pulled out a worn bill and pressed it into Jasmine's hand. "You're too cheap, you know that. You should charge more." "I charge what's fair." "Fair doesn't keep the lights on, honey." Mrs. Thompson squeezed her hand. "Take care of yourself." After she left, Jasmine added the $6 to the small cash box under the counter. One customer. $6. She sat back down and stared at the empty shop. At 2 p.m., the door opened again. Jasmine looked up and her stomach dropped. William Henderson stood in the doorway. Tall, white, mid-50s. His expensive wool coat was buttoned against the cold. His face was carved from ice. "Henderson," Jasmine stood up quickly. "I wasn't expecting. May I come in?" She stepped aside. He walked in slowly, surveying the shop with cold, assessing eyes. "Miss Washington," he said, his voice flat. "We need to talk. I know I'm behind on rent, but if you could just give me—" He cut her off. "You're 4 months behind. That's $7,200. Plus this month, which is also due." I know. Jasmine's voice cracked. "But business has been slow and I just need a little more time." Henderson turned to face her fully. "I've given you time. 4 months of time. I have bills to pay too, Miss Washington. I have property taxes. I have maintenance costs. I understand, but your grandmother understood that business is business." Jasmine's hands clenched into fists. "My grandmother paid on time because she had customers. Do you know how many people came in today?" One customer. $6. That's not enough to— That's not my problem." The words hit like a slap. Henderson pulled an envelope from his coat pocket and set it on the counter. "Official eviction notice. You have until January 15th to pay $2,800, the bare minimum, to avoid immediate legal action. If you can't pay, you need to vacate the premises. 3 days. Jasmine's voice was barely a whisper. "You're giving me 3 days. I'm being generous. I could have started legal proceedings weeks ago." He headed for the door, then paused. "I'm not a bad person, Miss Washington. I'm a businessman. There's a difference." After he left, Jasmine stood frozen in the empty shop. Through the window, people walked past. A mother with 2 children. A couple holding hands. A businessman on his phone. None of them looked in. None of them stopped. They never did. Jasmine closed the shop at 6 p.m. and walked home through the snow. The cold bit through her thin jacket, but she barely felt it. Her mind was spinning, calculating, desperately searching for a solution that didn't exist. Inside the apartment, Zara sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks and papers. At 16 she looked so much like their mother, the same dark eyes, the same determined set to her jaw. "Hey sis." Jasmine forced a smile. "How was school?" Zara didn't look up. "Fine." Something in her sister's voice made Jasmine pause. "Just fine." "Yeah, fine." Jasmine set down her bag and walked over. That's when she saw it. The envelope on the table. The return address from the State Scholarship Board. Her heart stopped. "Zara, I didn't get it." Zara's voice was flat. Too flat. "They sent the letter today." Jasmine picked up the envelope with shaking hands. She'd already read it 23 times, but seeing it here in front of Zara made it real all over again. Point 15. "I'm sorry." Zara finally looked up and her eyes were red. "I know we needed this. I know you were counting on it." "No." Jasmine knelt beside her sister's chair. "No, don't you dare apologize. You did everything right. You worked so hard. But it wasn't enough. Zara's voice broke. My GPA wasn't high enough. I'm not good enough. And now I can't go to college, and you're going to have to keep working yourself to death for me, and the tears came then. Hot and fast. Maybe I shouldn't go to college at all, Zara whispered. Maybe I should just get a job and help you with the shop. Stop. Jasmine grabbed her sister's shoulders. Stop right now. You are going to college, Zara. Do you hear me? You're brilliant. You're going to do amazing things. It's just a setback. But we can't afford. I'll figure it out. How? Zara wiped her eyes roughly. Sis, I see the bills. I know we're broke. I know Mr. Henderson wants to kick us out. How are you going to figure this out? Jasmine opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came. How? When she had $743 and needed thousands? How? When the shop was dying and she couldn't save it? How? When every day felt like drowning? I don't know, she finally whispered. But I will. I promise you I will. Zara leaned her head against Jasmine's shoulder. I'm scared, sis. Me too, baby. Me too. The next morning, Jasmine woke at 5 a.m. She hadn't really slept, just dozed in and out, her mind racing with impossible math. $743. 3 days, $2,800. No matter how many times she calculated, the numbers didn't work. She got dressed quietly, trying not to wake Zara. In the kitchen she counted the money one more time. Still $743. She took $12, a 10 and 2 ones, and slipped them into her pocket. Food. She needed to buy food. The rest went back in the envelope, hidden in her underwear drawer. The safest place she could think of. Before leaving she wrote a note for Zara. Gone to buy groceries. Back soon. Love you. Outside, the morning was brutal. The temperature had dropped to -15 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. The snow from yesterday had frozen into sheets of ice. Jasmine's broken zipper let the wind cut straight through her jacket. She walked 3 blocks to Save Mart, the discount grocery store. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The store was nearly empty, just her and an exhausted-looking cashier. Jasmine headed straight for the clearance section, the shelf where they put food about to expire. She picked through the items carefully. Ramen noodles, marked down to $1.50, a dented can of beans for $2. A loaf of day-old bread, reduced by 50%, $1.75. A small container of peanut butter for $3.50. Her fingers hovered over a package of chicken breasts. $8.99. Not on sale. She put it back. At the register, the teenage cashier barely looked at her as he scanned the items. $8.75. Jasmine handed over the $10 bill. The cashier gave her $1.25 in change, $1.25. She had $4.25 left now. 4 days of food for 2 people if they were careful. Just make it to Monday, she told herself. Then you'll figure something out. But Monday was the deadline. Monday was when Henderson would come with locks and legal papers. Jasmine grabbed the thin plastic bag and stepped back out into the cold. She walked past the pharmacy, dark and closed. Past the insurance office where Mrs. Thompson worked. Past. Jasmine stopped. Through the frosted window of Snowflake Diner, she saw something that made her heart clench. An old woman sat alone at the corner table. White hair, thin shoulders hunched forward. In front of her sat a single glass of water, the only thing on the table. The woman's coat was threadbare, holes visible even from outside. Her hands resting on the table, trembled continuously. Not from cold, though it was cold, from something deeper. Hunger maybe. Or exhaustion so complete, it lived in the bones. Jasmine knew that kind of tired. She felt it every day, but this was worse. So much worse. A young man in a Snowflake Diner apron stood beside the woman's table. Even through the window, Jasmine could see the irritation on his face. His arms were crossed, his mouth was moving. Jasmine stepped closer to the window. Inside the diner, Kevin Morrison was done being patient. He'd been working at Snowflake for 6 months, and this old lady had been coming in almost every night for the past month. She'd order a free water, sit for hours, and never buy anything else. Tonight the diner was busy. The cold snap had people wanting hot drinks before heading home. And this woman was taking up a 4-person table by the window, prime real estate. "Ma'am," Kevin said, louder this time. "I need you to either order something or leave. We have paying customers waiting." The old woman looked up at him. Her eyes were pale blue, watery with age. "Please son, just 10 more minutes. The snow is so heavy, and I don't have anywhere warm to go." "That's not my problem." Kevin felt a flash of guilt, but pushed it down. He was just doing his job. "This is a coffee shop, not a warming shelter. If you want to stay you need to buy something. I don't have any money." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then I'm sorry, but you can't be here." From behind the counter Sharon, the manager, called out, "Kevin's right, Mrs. Williams. I've let you stay here before, but we can't keep doing this. We're a business." A man at the next table muttered to his companion, just loud enough to be heard, "Homeless problem in this town is getting out of hand." His companion nodded. Someone should do something, but neither of them did anything. They just looked away. The old woman, Mrs. Williams, pushed herself to her feet. Her movements were so slow, so painful. She picked up a worn plastic bag from the floor. Everything she owned probably. She shuffled toward the door. Outside, Jasmine watched through the window. She saw the young barista cross his arms. Saw the manager turn away. Saw the other customers study their phones, their laptops, their drinks, anything to avoid looking at the old woman struggling to stand. Something hot and sharp twisted in Jasmine's chest. She'd seen this before. 2 years ago. The hospital, Grandma Rosa clutching her chest, face gray with pain. The receptionist's cold voice. "Do you have insurance?" "No." "Then I'm sorry, but you'll have to wait." They'd made Grandma Rosa wait 4 hours in the ER waiting room. By the time they took her back, it was too late. "Business is business," the hospital administrator had said later, when Jasmine was screaming at him through her tears. "We have policies. Policies, rules. Business people died because of policies." Jasmine looked down at her grocery bag. $8.75. 4 days of food. She looked at the old woman now, at the diner door, her hand shaking so badly she could barely turn the handle. If that woman went out into this blizzard with nowhere to go, she wouldn't survive the night. Jasmine knew it with absolute certainty. "If you turn away now," a voice whispered in her head. Grandma Rosa's voice. "You're no different than the people who let me die." But Jasmine had $4.25 left. That was all. She needed every penny. She looked at the grocery bag again. 4 days of food. She looked at the woman. 1 night of life. A memory flashed. Grandma Rosa at the sewing machine, her gentle hands guiding Jasmine's. "Mija, cada pontada es un acto de esperanza." Every stitch is an act of hope. "Damn it," Jasmine whispered. She pulled open the diner door and stepped inside. Warm air hit her face. The smell of coffee and cinnamon. The moment Jasmine walked through the door, conversation stopped. Every head turned. She felt their eyes on her, assessing, judging. Her coat was thin and worn, the zipper broken and held together with a safety pin. Her shoes had a hole near the left toe that she tried to patch with duct tape. Her hands were rough, marked with tiny scars from needle pricks. She didn't belong in a place like Snowflake Diner, with its glossy wooden tables and soft lighting and customers in North Face jackets, who paid $5 for a latte without thinking twice. But she kept walking. The old woman stood frozen by the door, one hand still on the handle, looking at Jasmine with confused watery eyes. Jasmine walked straight to the counter. Her shoes squeaked on the wet floor, leaving tracks of melting snow. Kevin was there, wiping down the espresso machine. He looked up as she approached, and Jasmine saw recognition flicker across his face. The woman from outside. The one who'd been watching. "Hi." Jasmine's voice came out quieter than she wanted. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I'd like 2 large bowls of soup please. And 2 grilled cheese sandwiches. And 2 black coffees." Kevin glanced at the menu board, then back at Jasmine. His eyes traveled down to her patched shoes, her worn coat. Okay. The soup is $6.50 each, sandwiches are $4.50 each, and coffees are $3 each. That's $28 total. Jasmine's hands went cold. $28. She had $4.25. No, think. She looked at the menu again. Actually, her voice cracked. 2 small soups, 2 half sandwiches, 2 small coffees. How much is that? Kevin calculated. $17.50. Jasmine had $4.25. Her mind raced. The $8.75 in food she just bought. If she returned it? No. The receipt was already gone, probably thrown in the trash outside, and even if she could return it, that would only give her $13. She needed $17.50. Unless, Jasmine's hand went to her pocket. The $10 she'd used at Save Mart. She'd gotten $1.25 back. So she had, she'd put the change in her other pocket. And there was, she remembered now, there was emergency money. The $20 she'd hidden in her coat lining 3 months ago. The $20 she'd forgotten about. With shaking hands, Jasmine reached into the torn lining of her coat. Her fingers found the folded bill. Please, please, please be there. She pulled it out. A 20. Plus the $1.25 in her other pocket. $21.25. Enough. I'm sorry. Jasmine put the money on the counter. 2 small soups, 2 half sandwiches, 2 small coffees. For here. Her hands trembled as she counted it out. The 20, the dollar, the quarter. $21.25 on the counter. Kevin counted it. His eyes flickered to Jasmine's face, then to the old woman still standing by the door. You're good. His voice was soft now. Different. I'll bring it to your table. Keep the change, Jasmine said. Kevin's face went red. I'll get your order ready. Jasmine turned away from the counter and walked to where the old woman stood. Ma'am, Jasmine said softly. Would you mind if I sat with you? I really don't like eating alone. The old woman's eyes went wide, confused. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. You don't have to do this, she finally whispered, her voice hoarse. You don't. I'm nobody. I'm just, you're not nobody. Jasmine reached out slowly and gently touched the old woman's elbow. The fabric of her coat was so thin Jasmine could feel bone underneath. And my grandmother used to say that soup tastes better when it's shared with a friend. So would you share a meal with me? The old woman's eyes filled with tears. They spilled over, running down the deep lines of her face. I don't understand, she said. Why would you? Because it's cold outside. Jasmine smiled, though her own eyes were burning. And because I saw you. And I thought maybe you could use a friend. And honestly, so could I. The old woman's hand finally released the door handle. She let Jasmine guide her back to the corner table. Around them the diner slowly came back to life. Conversations resumed. Quieter now. Keyboards clicked. But Jasmine could still feel people watching from the corners of their eyes. They sat down across from each other. The old woman moved like every joint hurt, lowering herself into the chair with a small gasp. Up close, Jasmine could see just how thin she was. Her cheekbones jutted out sharply. Her neck was like a bird's, fragile and thin. The coat she wore hung on her like it was 3 sizes too big. How long had she been living like this? I'm Jasmine, she said. Jasmine Washington. The old woman wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her fingers were gnarled with arthritis, the knuckles swollen. Margaret, she said. Margaret Reynolds. But most people, she trailed off, not finishing the sentence. Most people don't call me anything. Jasmine filled in silently. Most people don't see me at all. Margaret's a beautiful name. Jasmine said. Margaret looked at her like she couldn't remember the last time someone had said something kind to her. Kevin appeared beside their table, carrying a tray. He set down 2 steaming bowls of soup, 2 grilled cheese sandwiches cut in half, and 2 black coffees. His hands shook slightly as he arranged the items on the table. Is there? He cleared his throat. Is there anything else you need? Jasmine looked at him, really looked at him. He was young, early 20s probably, a college kid working a part-time job. His name tag said Kevin, with a little coffee cup drawn underneath. He wasn't evil, he was just tired, overworked, following rules because that's what you did. No, Jasmine said. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin nodded and walked away quickly, his shoulders hunched. Margaret stared at the food in front of her. She reached out one trembling hand and touched the sandwich like she was afraid it might disappear. Her voice cracked. I can't. Do you know it's been 3 days? I haven't eaten anything in 3 days except some bread I found in a dumpster behind the grocery store. The words hit Jasmine like a physical blow. 3 days, the same amount of time her $8.75 in groceries was supposed to feed her and Zara. And Margaret had been eating from dumpsters. Then please, Jasmine said, pushing the sandwich closer to Margaret. Please eat. Margaret picked up the sandwich with both hands. They shook so badly she almost dropped it. She brought it to her mouth and took a bite. And then she started to cry. Not quiet tears this time. Deep wrenching sobs that made her whole body shake. She chewed and swallowed and cried, and Jasmine felt her own throat close up. I'm sorry. Margaret gasped between bites. I'm so sorry. I can't remember the last time someone was kind to me. I can't remember the last time someone saw me and didn't look away. Jasmine reached across the table and took Margaret's free hand. It felt like holding a bird. Small bones, papery skin, the faintest flutter of a pulse. Why? Margaret whispered, looking at Jasmine with raw, desperate eyes. Why would you do this for a stranger? For someone like me? Jasmine thought about Grandma Rosa, about sitting beside her hospital bed, holding her hand while she died, about the receptionist who'd made them wait, about Mr. Henderson's cold eyes, about all the people who walked past suffering every day because it was easier not to see. You're not a stranger, Jasmine said quietly. You're a person who needed help, and maybe her voice caught. Maybe I needed to help someone. Maybe I needed to remember that I'm still human, even when the world tries to make me forget. Margaret squeezed her hand. What's your name again? Jasmine Washington. Jasmine Washington. Margaret said it slowly, like she was memorizing it. You're an angel, Jasmine. I'm not an angel. Jasmine shook her head. I'm just someone who had $20 and saw someone who needed it more. $20 you probably needed yourself. Margaret's voice was sharp now, clearer. She looked at Jasmine's worn coat, her rough hands. You're not rich, are you? Jasmine laughed, but it came out bitter. No, I'm definitely not rich. Then why? My grandmother raised me. Jasmine wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, feeling the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. She taught me that every stitch is an act of hope, that making something beautiful from broken pieces is the most important thing we can do. She looked at Margaret. You're not broken, you've just been torn. And maybe this is me trying to make something beautiful. Margaret's eyes spilled over again, but she was smiling now. Actually smiling. They sat there in silence for a moment. Not the uncomfortable silence of strangers, but the easy quiet of two people who understood each other. Margaret ate her sandwich slowly, savoring every bite. Jasmine sipped her coffee, black, bitter, perfect, and felt warmth spread through her chest. Not from the coffee, from something else. Around them the diner hummed with life, but in their corner, in their small circle of warmth, the world felt a little less cold. Can I ask you something? Margaret said after she'd finished half the sandwich. Of course. Do you believe in angels, real ones? Jasmine thought about it. I don't know. Maybe. Why? Margaret smiled. A real smile this time, reaching her eyes. Because if they exist, I think they look like you. Like ordinary people doing extraordinary things when nobody's watching. Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. I think if angels exist, she said, they're just people who refuse to look away. Then the world needs more angels. Yeah, Jasmine whispered, it really does. Margaret reached across the table and covered Jasmine's hand with both of hers. Thank you,
You saved my life tonight. You know that, don't you? Jasmine did know. Without food, without warmth, Margaret wouldn't have survived the blizzard. She would have been another statistic, another homeless person found frozen in the morning. But not tonight. Tonight Margaret would live.
And Jasmine, despite having just spent money she desperately needed, felt something she hadn't felt in months. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd done something that mattered. Outside, the snow continued to fall, burying the street in white. The temperature kept dropping. The blizzard raged on. But inside Snowflake Diner, two women sat together over soup and sandwiches, no longer quite so alone. And sometimes Jasmine thought that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. They sat together for 30 minutes before Margaret began to talk. Really talk. At first it was small things. The weather, how cold it was, how the soup was the best thing she'd eaten in months. But then slowly, like ice melting, the real story came out. I wasn't always like this, Margaret said, her fingers wrapped around her coffee cup. I had a life once. A real life. Jasmine leaned forward. Tell me about it. Margaret's eyes went distant, looking at something far away. I was a nurse. 38 years at St. Mary's Hospital. I worked the night shift, mostly intensive care. I loved those patients. Every single one of them. Even when they were scared or angry or dying, I loved them. A small smile touched her lips. That's a long time, Jasmine said softly. It was my whole life. Margaret's voice was warm now, remembering my husband Robert. He was an engineer, built bridges, highways, strong, steady man. We got married when I was 22, had our son Christopher 2 years later. Her face lit up when she said his name. Christopher, he was such a good boy. Margaret continued, her voice catching. Smart, kind, always building things with his father. They'd spend weekends in the garage, working on projects together. Robert taught him everything, how to use tools, how to read blueprints. But I taught him the important stuff. She smiled through tears. How to be gentle, how to see people who are hurting, how to help. He sounds wonderful, Jasmine said. He was. He is. Margaret's hands tightened around her cup. Robert died 7 years ago. Cancer. It was fast. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Christopher flew home from Boston, where he'd moved for work. He stayed with us those last 2 months. Held his father's hand when he passed. Jasmine felt her throat tighten. I'm so sorry. After Robert died, Christopher wanted me to move to California to live with him. But I couldn't leave Portland. This was my home. Our home. I had memories here. 46 years of memories. Margaret looked out the window at the falling snow. I told him I'd be fine. I had my pension, my house. I'd visit him soon. But you never did, Jasmine said quietly. Margaret shook her head. 5 years ago, I finally decided to go visit him. I packed a bag, got in my car, started driving to Boston. It's a long drive, about 45 hours. I made it almost all the way. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Almost. Jasmine waited. There was ice on the road. Margaret continued. Black ice. I didn't see it. My car, it just spun out. I remember the feeling of losing control. I remember the guardrail coming at me, and then she closed her eyes. Nothing. Just darkness. What happened? I was in a coma for 3 months. Margaret's hands trembled. When I woke up, I didn't know where I was. Didn't know my own name for the first week. The doctor said I had a traumatic brain injury. My memory was scattered. Pieces missing. She opened her eyes and they were full of pain so deep it made Jasmine's chest ache. The hospital tried to contact Christopher, but I'd only had his old address in my wallet. He'd moved. New job. New house. The letters they sent came back undeliverable. They couldn't reach him. Oh God. Jasmine whispered. The hospital bills. Margaret laughed bitterly. Do you know how much 3 months in intensive care costs? I didn't have insurance that covered it all. They sold my house to pay the debt. Everything. My home. My furniture. 46 years of memories gone. Sold to strangers. Jasmine thought about Grandma Rosa. About hospital bills that multiplied like cancer. About a system that turned tragedy into debt. When I was finally discharged, I had nothing. Margaret said, no home. No money. No way to find Christopher. I went to the police, but without his new address or phone number they couldn't help. I tried directory assistance, but there were hundreds of Christopher Reynolds in Massachusetts. Hundreds. You couldn't use the internet. Margaret shook her head. I didn't have a computer, didn't have a phone. The library has computers, but I'm 72 years old, dear. I never learned. And by the time I tried, I couldn't think straight. The head injury left me confused sometimes, forgetful. She set down her coffee cup and stared at her hands. So I lived on the streets. 5 years now. I sleep at the shelter when there's room, but it fills up fast in winter. Most nights I sleep on benches, in the bus station, in doorways, anywhere I can find that's out of the wind. Her voice was flat now, reciting facts. I collect cans for money. Sometimes people give me change. The church serves meals on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I get by. That's not living, Jasmine said. That's surviving. Is there a difference? Margaret looked at her with hollow eyes. Jasmine thought for a moment. There has to be. 2 years ago, Margaret said quietly. I tried to end it. I walked into the river in January. The water was so cold it burned. I thought it would be fast, peaceful. Jasmine's hand flew to her mouth. But a jogger saw me, pulled me out, called 911. They took me to the hospital, asked me questions, put me in a psych ward for 72 hours, then released me back onto the streets. Margaret's laugh was hollow. They saved my life just to throw me back into the same hell I was trying to escape. Margaret, I'm not telling you this for pity, Margaret said quickly. I'm telling you because you asked. Because you're the first person in 5 years who's looked at me like I'm human, like I'm worth listening to. Jasmine reached across the table and took both of Margaret's hands. You are human. You are worth everything. Margaret's eyes filled with tears again. You say that, but Christopher doesn't even know I'm alive. He thinks I died in that accident. He probably mourned me and moved on. Got married maybe. Had children. Built a life without me. Or maybe he's been looking for you, Jasmine said. Maybe he never stopped. Why would he? Because you're his mother. And sons don't forget their mothers. Margaret pulled her hands away and wiped her eyes. Tell me about you, she said. I've talked enough. I want to know about the angel who bought me dinner. Jasmine wasn't sure she wanted to share. Her problems felt small compared to Margaret's. But something in the old woman's eyes, genuine interest, real caring, made her open up. My parents died when I was 19, Jasmine said. Factory accident. They both worked at the same plant, same shift. There was an explosion. They didn't. It was fast. Margaret squeezed her hand. My sister Zara was only 7. We had no other family except my grandmother, Rosa. She was already in her 70s, but she took us in without hesitation. Jasmine smiled, remembering. She taught me to sew. She'd say, Mija, cada pontada is un acto de esperanza. Every stitch is an act of hope, that we could take broken things and make them whole again. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. Jasmine's throat tightened. 2 years ago she had a heart attack. We rushed her to the hospital, but we didn't have good insurance. They made us wait 4 hours in the ER. By the time they took her back it was too late. Oh honey, the hospital bills came anyway. Thousands of dollars for a woman who died in their waiting room. Jasmine's voice was bitter. I sold everything I could to pay them. But I kept the shop. Her shop, Mama's touch. It was her legacy. I thought I could keep it alive. Keep her dream alive. But it's not working, Margaret said gently. No, Jasmine shook her head. Business is dying. I make maybe $20–30 a day. The rent is $1,800 a month. I'm 4 months behind. My landlord gave me 3 days to come up with $2,800, or he's evicting me. 3 days, and Zara. Jasmine's voice cracked. She's so smart, so brilliant. She got rejected from a scholarship today. Missed it by 0.15 points. She wants to quit school, get a job, help me. But I can't let her do that. I can't let her give up her future because I'm failing. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then you're not failing, child. You're drowning. There's a difference. Feels the same, I know. Margaret reached across the table again. But you know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who spent her last $20 feeding a stranger. I see someone who still has hope even when everything's falling apart. That's not failure, that's courage. Jasmine laughed, but it came out as a sob. I don't feel courageous, I feel terrified. Courage isn't not being scared. Margaret said, it's being scared and doing the right thing anyway. Like tonight, you could have walked past me. Most people did, but you didn't. They sat in silence for a moment. Two women from different generations, different lives, connected by shared pain and unexpected kindness. You know what's funny? Margaret said softly. I was ready to die tonight. I was going to walk out into that blizzard and just let go, let the cold take me, but then you showed up. She smiled through her tears. Maybe the universe isn't completely cruel after all. Don't say that. Jasmine said fiercely. Don't talk about dying. We'll figure something out. Jasmine, Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. I've given up on finding Christopher. After 5 years it's time to accept that part of my life is over. No, Jasmine grabbed both of Margaret's hands. No, you're not giving up. Not tonight. Not ever. You hear me? Margaret looked at her. This fierce young woman who'd appeared out of nowhere with soup and hope, and nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Outside the blizzard raged on, burying the world in white. Inside, two women held hands across the table and refused to let go. And somewhere, in that moment, a spark of hope was lit. A spark that would soon become a fire. After they finished eating, Jasmine made a decision. You're coming home with me. Margaret looked up, startled. What? No, I can't. Yes, you can. Jasmine's voice was firm. It's -18 degrees outside. There's a blizzard warning. You're not sleeping on the street tonight. But you don't even know me. I'm dirty. I smell. I can't just. Margaret. Jasmine stood up and held out her hand. My grandmother taught me that home isn't a place. It's where you're safe. And tonight, you're going to be safe. Margaret stared at Jasmine's outstretched hand for a long moment. Then slowly she reached up and took it. Her grip was weak, but it was there. Jasmine helped her stand. Margaret swayed slightly, and Jasmine steadied her. Thank you. Margaret whispered. Thank you so much. As they walked toward the door, Kevin stepped out from behind the counter. Wait. His voice cracked. Mrs. Williams, I'm sorry, for earlier, for asking you to leave. I was just. You were doing your job. Margaret said gently. I understand. No. Kevin shook his head, his eyes red. There's doing your job, and there's being cruel. I was cruel, and I'm sorry. Margaret reached out and patted his arm. You're forgiven, son. Kevin looked at Jasmine. And you, what you just did? I didn't do anything special, Jasmine said quietly. You did everything. Sharon appeared beside Kevin, wiping her eyes. You reminded us what it means to be human. Jasmine didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded, and she and Margaret walked out into the snow. The walk to Jasmine's apartment took 15 minutes. Margaret moved slowly, leaning on Jasmine for support. By the time they reached the building, both women were shaking from the cold. Jasmine unlocked the door and helped Margaret up the 3 flights of stairs. Inside the apartment, Zara was still at the kitchen table doing homework by lamplight. She looked up as the door opened, and her eyes went wide. Sis, who? Zara, this is Margaret Reynolds. Jasmine helped Margaret to the couch. She's going to stay with us tonight. Zara stood up slowly, taking in Margaret's torn coat, her thin frame, the exhaustion in her eyes. Then she smiled. A warm, genuine smile. Hi, Mrs. Reynolds. I'm Zara. Welcome to our home. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. You're so kind, both of you. I don't deserve. Yes, you do, Zara said firmly. She grabbed a blanket from her room and draped it over Margaret's shoulders. Are you hungry? We have. She glanced at Jasmine. We have ramen. I can make you some. We just ate, Jasmine said quickly. But thank you, Zed. Zara looked at the clock, 10:30 p.m., and then at Jasmine. Reading her sister's face, understanding something important had happened. I'm going to bed, Zara said. Mrs. Reynolds, the couch is really comfortable. Let me get you another blanket. After Zara brought the extra blanket and said goodnight, Jasmine sat with Margaret for a while longer. Your sister is wonderful. Margaret said. You raised her well. I'm trying. Jasmine smiled. She's the good one. No. Margaret reached out and took Jasmine's hand. You're both good. Don't ever forget that. They sat in comfortable silence until Margaret's eyes began to close. Get some sleep, Jasmine whispered. You're safe here. Safe, Margaret murmured. I haven't felt safe in 5 years. Jasmine waited until Margaret's breathing evened out into sleep. Then she stood quietly and went to her room. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. At 11 p.m., she pulled out her old laptop, a Dell she'd bought second-hand 3 years ago. The screen was cracked in one corner, and the battery barely held a charge. She opened it. The screen flickered to life. Battery, 18%. Jasmine's fingers trembled as she opened a browser and typed into Google, Christopher Reynolds. The results loaded. 2.4 million hits. Her heart sank. There were pages and pages of Christopher Reynolds. Actors, athletes, businessmen, doctors, teachers. How was she supposed to find the right one? She tried again. Christopher Reynolds, engineer, Boston. Still thousands of results. Battery, 15%. Jasmine rubbed her eyes. This was impossible. Margaret had said Christopher moved, changed addresses, started over. He could be anywhere. He could have changed careers. Wait. Jasmine sat up straighter. Margaret had said something else. Something about Christopher as a child. They'd spend weekends in the garage working on projects together. No, that wasn't it. He was always building things with his father. Still not it. Jasmine closed her eyes, trying to remember the exact words. Christopher always said he wanted to build houses for people who didn't have them. He said, everyone deserves a home. That was it. Jasmine's fingers flew across the keyboard. Christopher Reynolds, Affordable Housing, Boston. She hit enter. Battery, 12%. The page loaded, and there at the very top of the results was a website, Reynolds and Partners Architecture. Jasmine clicked on it. The website was professional, clean. The header image showed a modern apartment building with a tagline underneath. Building homes, building hope. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. She clicked on About Us. A page loaded with information about the company's mission, their projects, their commitment to creating housing for low-income families. And there at the bottom, Meet Our Founder. Jasmine clicked. A photo appeared. A man in his mid-40s, standing in front of a construction site. He wore a hard hat and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He was smiling at the camera, a warm, genuine smile, and his eyes were pale blue, just like Margaret's. Jasmine's hand started shaking so badly she almost dropped the laptop. She read the bio beneath the photo. Christopher Reynolds founded Reynolds and Partners in 2015 with a simple mission: ensure that every family has access to safe, affordable housing. Born in 1980 and raised in Portland, Oregon, Christopher learned the value of hard work from his father, George Reynolds, a civil engineer, and the importance of compassion from his mother, Margaret Reynolds, a beloved nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. Jasmine's vision blurred with tears. This was him. This was Margaret's son. She kept reading, her heart pounding. After studying engineering at MIT, Christopher spent 10 years in corporate real estate before founding R&P. He credits his parents with inspiring his life's work. My father taught me how to build, Christopher says. My mother taught me why to build. She always said that everyone matters, especially those the world tries to ignore. Jasmine scrolled down to the bottom of the bio. The last line made her stop breathing. In loving memory of my mother, Margaret Reynolds, 1952-2020, and my father, George Reynolds, 1948-2017. Everything I do is for them. Marcus thought his mother died in 2020, the year of the accident, but Margaret was alive. She was alive and sleeping on Jasmine's couch right now, just 15 feet away. Battery, 10%. Jasmine clicked on the news section of the website. Several articles popped up. Interviews with Christopher, stories about his projects, features in architecture magazines. The most recent article was dated 3 months ago. Jasmine clicked on it. It was an interview with Architecture Today. The headline read, Building a Legacy,
Christopher Reynolds on affordable housing and personal loss. Jasmine scanned the article frantically, looking for any mention of Margaret. There, halfway down the page, Reynolds admits that his drive comes from a place of deep personal loss. "I lost my mother in 2020, he says, his voice thick with emotion. "She was on her way to visit me when she had a car accident. I was on a business trip in Seattle. By the time I got the news and flew back, it was too late. I never got to say goodbye." Jasmine's tears fell onto the keyboard. "The biggest regret of my life is that I wasn't there for her at the end." Reynolds continues, "I was building my career, chasing success, and I let months go by without visiting her. I told myself I'd go next month, next quarter when things slowed down. But things never slow down, do they? And then she was gone." Jasmine kept reading, her chest tight. In his mother's memory, Reynolds established the Margaret's Light Foundation, a non-profit that provides support services for homeless individuals. "My mother dedicated her life to helping others," he explains. "She believed that everyone deserves to be seen, to be valued. The foundation is my way of continuing her work, of making sure her light keeps shining." Jasmine sat back, the laptop screen blurred in front of her. Christopher hadn't forgotten his mother. He was honoring her every single day. He'd built a charity in her name. He was helping homeless people like Margaret, because of what she'd taught him. And he had no idea she was still alive. Battery 8%. Jasmine wiped her eyes and looked at the photo of Christopher one more time. He had Margaret's eyes, Margaret's smile, and he was doing exactly what she'd raised him to do, helping people, seeing the invisible, making the world a little bit kinder. "He still loves you," Jasmine whispered to the photo. "He never stopped loving you." Battery 5%. Jasmine quickly memorized the contact information. Reynolds and Partners Architecture, Sacramento, California. Phone, 617-555-0147. Battery 3%. She grabbed her phone and took a photo of the screen, the website, Christopher's face, the phone number. Battery 2%. The laptop screen flickered. Battery 1%. Jasmine quickly pulled out a piece of paper and a pencil from her nightstand. With shaking hands she wrote Christopher Reynolds, 617-555-0147, Reynolds and Partners, Sacramento, son of Margaret Reynolds. The laptop screen went black. Dead, but Jasmine wasn't. She felt more awake, more alive than she had in months. Margaret was wrong. She hadn't lost Christopher. He was still there, still her son, still carrying her lessons in his heart. And Jasmine was going to bring them back together. She didn't know how yet. She didn't have a plan. She had $4.25, 3 days until eviction, and a dead laptop. But she had something else now too. She had hope. Every stitch is an act of hope. Grandma Rosa's voice echoed in her mind. Jasmine stood up and looked out the window. The blizzard was still raging, but somewhere in the darkness, dawn was coming, and with it maybe a miracle. Jasmine barely slept. By 5:30 a.m., she was dressed and standing in the living room, staring at the couch. It was empty. The blankets were folded neatly. Margaret was gone. Panic seized Jasmine's chest. She ran to the kitchen. There, on the table, was a note written in shaky handwriting. "Dear Jasmine, you have done more for me than I can ever repay, but I cannot be a burden to you. You have your own troubles, your own life. Thank you for reminding me what kindness looks like. Margaret." No. Jasmine grabbed her coat and ran out the door. She didn't bother with the zipper, didn't bother with gloves. She ran down the 3 flights of stairs and burst out into the freezing morning. The snow had stopped, but the temperature had dropped to -18 degrees Fahrenheit. The streets were empty, buried under 2 feet of snow. Jasmine ran toward downtown, toward the places she remembered seeing homeless people sleep. The bus station empty. The church doorway, locked, no one there. The park, abandoned. Then she remembered the old bank building on 5th Street. The one that had been closed for 3 years, windows boarded up. There was a recessed doorway that offered some shelter from the wind. Jasmine ran. Her lungs burned. Her face felt numb, but she kept running. When she turned onto 5th Street, she saw it. A shape huddled in the bank doorway, covered in dirty blankets. "Margaret," Jasmine's voice cracked. "Margaret." The shape stirred. A face emerged from the blankets, pale, drawn, but alive. "Jasmine." Margaret's voice was weak. You came back." Jasmine dropped to her knees beside the old woman. "Of course I came back. I found him, Margaret. I found Christopher." Margaret blinked slowly, like she was having trouble processing the words. "What? Your son, Christopher Williams? I found him online last night." Jasmine pulled out her phone, hands shaking. "Look, is this him?" She held the screen in front of Margaret's face, showing the screenshot she'd taken. Margaret stared at the photo. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then tears started streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Christopher," she whispered. "That's my boy. That's my Christopher." Her trembling fingers reached toward the screen but didn't touch it, like she was afraid the image would disappear.
"He looks so much like his father now. He's a CEO," Jasmine said quickly. "He runs a company that builds affordable housing. He's successful, Margaret. He's doing exactly what you taught him to do, helping people." Margaret was shaking her head. No, this can't be real. Christopher thinks I'm dead. It's been 5 years. He's moved on. He probably has a family now, a wife, children. He doesn't need his mother showing up like this." She looked down at herself, the filthy blankets, the torn coat, her dirty hands. "Margaret, look at me." Jasmine grabbed the old woman's shoulders. "I read about him. He created a charity in your name. The Margaret's Light Foundation. It helps homeless people. Don't you see? He's honoring you. He never stopped loving you." Margaret covered her face with her hands. 5 years, Jasmine. I left him alone for 5 years. He must think I abandoned him, or that I didn't love him enough to find a way back. How can he ever forgive that? You didn't abandon him. You were hurt. You were lost. None of this was your fault. But he doesn't know that. Then we'll tell him. Jasmine was almost shouting now. "We'll call him. We'll explain. Margaret, your son thinks you're dead. He's been mourning you. Don't you think he deserves to know the truth?" Margaret looked at Jasmine with eyes full of terror and desperate hope. "What if he doesn't want to talk to me? What if he's angry? What if he's been waiting 5 years for this moment?" Jasmine knelt down so they were eye level. "Margaret, listen to me. The worst thing that can happen is he says no. And even then you'll know you tried. You'll know you didn't give up. Isn't that better than dying without ever knowing?" Margaret stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, call him. Are you sure?" "No." Margaret laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "But do it anyway. Before I lose my nerve." Jasmine's hands shook as she pulled up the phone number she'd saved last night. 617-555-0147. It was 6 a.m. in Portland, 9 a.m. in Massachusetts. Would anyone even be there yet? She pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "Please," Jasmine whispered. "Please pick up." On the 4th ring someone answered. "Reynolds and Partners, Christopher Reynolds speaking." The voice was deep, calm, professional. Margaret opened her mouth but no sound came out. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. Jasmine took the phone. "Mr. Reynolds, my name is Jasmine Washington. I'm calling from Portland, Oregon. I'm sitting here with your mother." Silence. "Then my mother passed away in 2020. I don't know who you are, but no, sir." Jasmine's voice was steady now. "She didn't die. She survived the accident. She's been alive this whole time. She's here, right now, with me." The silence on the other end was heavy. When Christopher spoke again, his voice was cold. "Do you know how many calls I get every year from people claiming to be related to me? People who want money or, I don't want money." Jasmine interrupted. "I'm telling you the truth. Your mother, Margaret Reynolds, is alive. She's been homeless for 5 years after a car accident. She's been trying to find you, but she couldn't." "I'm going to hang up now." "Wait." Jasmine's voice cracked. "Please, just wait. Ask me one question. Just one. Something only your mother would know." There was a long pause. Then Christopher said, voice trembling now, "What was my mother's favorite breakfast? The one she made every Sunday morning." Jasmine looked at Margaret, who was staring at the phone with wide, desperate eyes. "Tell me," Jasmine whispered. "Quick." Margaret's voice was barely audible. "Banana pancakes, with real maple syrup, and black coffee. He used to call it Sunday magic. Jasmine repeated it into the phone. Banana pancakes with real maple syrup and black coffee. Your son used to call it Sunday magic. The silence stretched out, then oh my God, Christopher's voice broke. How do you know that? Who are you? Because your mother told me, last night, at a diner, when I bought her soup because she was being kicked out into a blizzard. Put her on the phone, now, please. Jasmine handed the phone to Margaret. Margaret took it with shaking hands, holding it up to her ear like it was something sacred and terrifying all at once. Con. Her voice cracked. Christopher. And then from the phone loud enough for Jasmine to hear, Mom, oh my God. Mom. Margaret's face crumpled. Yes baby, it's me. It's Mom. Is it really you? Your voice I can't. Mom, is it really you? It's really me, sweetheart. Margaret was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I never wanted to leave you. I was trying to visit you. I was on my way, and then the accident, and I woke up and everything was gone. I tried to find you, baby. I tried so hard. I know. Christopher was crying too, his words tumbling over each other. It's okay. None of that matters now. You're alive. You're alive. They both cried for a moment, unable to speak. Then Christopher said, his voice soft, full of wonder, Mom, do you remember the first time I tried to make pancakes for you? I was 9, and you burned them so badly you set off the smoke alarm. Margaret laughed through her tears. And you were so scared your father would be angry, but he just laughed and said, at least you tried. You remember, Christopher breathed. You really remember? I remember everything, sweetheart. Every single day with you and your father. I never forgot, not for 1 second. Mom. Christopher's voice was gentle now. Do you remember the song you used to sing before bed? Margaret closed her eyes. Her voice, thin and trembling, began to sing. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. And then Christopher's voice joined in, stronger, carrying across the miles. You make me happy when skies are gray. Together, you'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Their voices broke. Neither could continue. They were both crying too hard. Jasmine stood in the doorway of the abandoned bank, tears freezing on her cheeks, watching Margaret clutch the phone like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Mom, Christopher finally said, where are you? Tell me where you are right now. I'm in Portland. I never left. I've been here the whole time. Stay there. His voice was fierce, commanding. Stay exactly where you are. I'm getting on a plane right now. Today. This minute. But Christopher, you have work. Your company, nothing is more important than you. Christopher cut her off. Nothing. Do you understand me? I lost you for 5 years. I'm not losing one more second. But I look terrible, son. I'm dirty and I smell, and I don't care if you're covered in mud. You're my mother. I'm coming to get you. Margaret started crying again. I love you so much. I never stopped loving you. I love you too, Mom. So much. His voice softened. Is Jasmine still there? The woman who called me. Margaret held the phone out to Jasmine. Mr. Reynolds, Miss Washington. His voice was thick with emotion. I don't know who you are or why you did this, but you gave me back my mother. I can never repay that. You don't need to. Can you stay with her until I get there? I'll cover all expenses, hotel, food, whatever you need. Just please don't let her out of your sight. Jasmine looked at Margaret, who was still clutching the phone like a lifeline, tears of joy streaming down her weathered face. I'll stay with her, Jasmine said quietly. Not because you're paying me, because she's my friend. Thank you. Christopher's voice broke. Thank you. I'll text you my flight information. I'll be there by tonight. We'll be waiting. After they hung up, Margaret and Jasmine sat in that cold doorway, holding each other, both crying. He's coming. Margaret kept saying, my boy is coming. He still loves me. Of course he loves you, Jasmine said, hugging her tight. He never stopped loving you. Around them the city was waking up. Cars driving by. People heading to work. The world kept turning. But in that moment, in that frozen doorway, 2 women held on to each other and believed in miracles. Because sometimes when you refuse to give up hope, when you do the right thing, even when it costs you everything, when you see someone who needs help and you actually help them, sometimes miracles happen. And sometimes that's enough to save more than one life. It's enough to save them all. Come on, Jasmine said, helping Margaret to her feet. You're coming back to my place. Your son is flying across the country to see you. You're not spending another minute in this doorway." Margaret shook her head. "I can't. I'm filthy. I smell. I can't go into your home like this." "Yes, you can." Jasmine wrapped her arm around Margaret's thin shoulders. "And you will." They walked back to the apartment slowly, Margaret leaning heavily on Jasmine. By the time they climbed the 3 flights of stairs, both women were exhausted. Inside, Zara was eating cereal at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas. She looked up as the door opened, and her eyes went wide. "Sis," she stared at Margaret, the torn coat, the dirty face, the visible exhaustion. Then she looked at her sister, and smiled. "Mrs. Reynolds, good morning. Welcome back." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "You're so kind, both of you. I don't deserve." "Yes, you do," Zara said simply. She stood up and pulled out a chair. "Please, sit down. Are you hungry? I can make you something." "Actually," Jasmine said, "I think Mrs. Reynolds could use a bath first, if that's okay." Margaret looked at the bathroom door like it was the gates of heaven. I haven't had a real bath in 5 years, she whispered. "Just washed in gas station sinks." Jasmine led her to the tiny bathroom, and turned on the water in the tub. Steam began to fill the small space. "Take your time," Jasmine said. "Use whatever you need. I'll find you some clean clothes." After Margaret was in the bath, Jasmine went to her closet. She pulled out a cardboard box from the top shelf, the one she could never bring herself to open. Grandma Rose's clothes, the things Jasmine couldn't bear to give away. She laid them out on her bed: a soft blue cardigan, a pair of comfortable pants, a floral blouse. Zara appeared in the doorway. "Sis," she said quietly, "those are Grandma's clothes." "I know. Are you sure?" Jasmine looked at her sister. "Grandma would want them to go to someone who needed them. Margaret needs them." Zara hugged her. "You're amazing, you know that. I'm just doing what's right." "No." Zara pulled back and looked at her seriously. "Most people know what's right. You actually do it. That's different." While Margaret bathed, Zara lit a vanilla candle and set out clean towels. She found Grandma Rose's old radio and tuned it to a station playing soft jazz. An hour later, Margaret emerged from the bathroom. She looked transformed. Her white hair was clean and combed. Her face was pink and scrubbed. Rose's blue cardigan fit her perfectly, and the pants, though a little loose, were held up with a belt Zara had found. "Mrs. Reynolds," Zara breathed, "you look beautiful." Margaret walked to the mirror in the hallway, and stared at her reflection. She touched her face gently, as if making sure it was real. "I don't even recognize myself," she whispered. I look like a person again." "You were always a person," Jasmine said. "Now you just look like yourself." Margaret turned away from the mirror, tears streaming down her clean cheeks. "Will Christopher recognize me? It's been so long, and I've changed so much." "He'll recognize you," Jasmine promised. "A mother's face is something you never forget." For breakfast or lunch, really, since it was now noon, Jasmine made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. They sat together at the small kitchen table, the 3 of them crowded around the worn surface. Margaret ate slowly, savoring every bite. "This is delicious," she said. "You're a wonderful cook, Jasmine." "My grandmother taught me." Jasmine smiled. She said food is love made visible. Zara talked about school, her classes, her friends, her dreams of college. Margaret listened like she was hearing the most fascinating story in the world, asking questions, making Zara laugh. "You're so smart," Margaret said. "You should be in college. Why aren't you going?" Zara's smile faded. "I didn't get the scholarship I applied for, and we can't afford it otherwise." "Zara's brilliant," Jasmine added. "Straight A's. She wants to be a social worker, to help people, like Mrs. Reynolds said." Zara said softly, "to help people see the invisible." Margaret reached across the table and took Zara's hand. "Don't give up on your dreams, honey. I gave up hope for 5 years. I thought my life was over, but Jasmine showed me something." She looked at Jasmine. "She showed me that sometimes when you think everything is lost, all it takes is one person who believes in you, one person who refuses to walk away." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "Sis has always been that person for me." "Then you're lucky," Margaret said. "And I'm sure you'll get to college somehow, because girls like you, smart, kind, determined, you don't get stopped by obstacles. You find a way around them." After lunch they moved to the living room. Margaret sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, and she told more stories about her years as a nurse, about the patient who couldn't walk in January but was running by June, about the girl from a broken home who went on to become a doctor, about Christopher as a little boy, building elaborate castles out of cardboard boxes. He used to say they were for kids who didn't have houses, Margaret said, smiling at the memory. Even at 5 years old he wanted to help people. That's why he does affordable housing now. Zara said, he's still building houses for people who need them. Margaret nodded, tears in her eyes. That's my boy. He has his father's brain and my heart. At 2 p.m., Jasmine's phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Miss Washington, this is Christopher Reynolds. I'm boarding the plane now. Should arrive Portland at 6 p.m. I can't thank you enough for staying with my mother. I've wired $1,000 to your account. Please use it for anything she needs, or anything you need. You've given me something priceless. Jasmine's hands shook as she opened her banking app. There it was. Deposit $1,000. $1,000. She could pay Mr. Henderson. Not all of it, but enough to buy more time. She could register Zara for community college classes. She could buy fabric, pay the electric bill, buy real food. She sat down on her bed and cried, not just from relief, though there was that, but from the overwhelming realization that sometimes doing the right thing actually worked out. Sometimes the universe noticed. Sometimes kindness didn't just cost you everything. Sometimes it saved you too. At 5:30 p.m., Jasmine's phone rang. She answered immediately. Mr. Reynolds, we just landed. Christopher's voice was breathless, urgent. I'm getting in a cab now. Where should I meet you? Jasmine looked at Margaret, who was sitting on the couch, hands clasped together, shaking. Can you come to Snowflake Diner, on Maple Street? It's where your mother and I met, where this all started. Yes, perfect. I'll be there in 20 minutes. After hanging up, Jasmine called the diner. Kevin answered on the third ring. Snowflake Diner. This is Kevin. It's Jasmine. Jasmine Washington. From last night. Jasmine, oh my God, is Mrs. Williams okay? I've been thinking about her all day. She's fine, better than fine. Kevin, I need to ask you a huge favor. Anything, seriously, anything. Margaret's son is flying in from Boston. He thought she was dead. They haven't seen each other in 5 years. I want them to meet at the diner, where it all started. Can we use the space, just for an hour? There was a long pause. Then Kevin said, his voice thick with emotion, oh my God, yes, absolutely yes. Sharon and I will set everything up. We'll make it perfect. Thank you. We'll be there at 6. By 5:45, Jasmine, Margaret and Zara arrived at Snowflake Diner. The transformation was stunning. Fresh white roses sat on every table. Soft candles flickered in glass holders. A banner hung across the back wall. Welcome home, Margaret. Kevin stood by the door, his eyes red. Sharon was behind the counter, wiping tears from her face. Mrs. Martha Thompson sat at a corner table, holding a hand-knitted scarf. For you, Mrs. Reynolds, she said, standing up, to keep you warm. Other regulars were there too. People who'd heard the story, people who wanted to witness the miracle. Margaret looked around at all these people, strangers who'd become something more, and she couldn't speak. She just stood there, crying, while they gathered around her. Come sit, Sharon said gently, guiding Margaret to the corner table. The same table where she'd sat yesterday with her glass of water. But now it was covered in flowers, and a small handwritten sign reserved for family reunion. Margaret sat down, and Jasmine sat beside her, holding her hand. I'm scared, Margaret whispered. What if he sees me and he's disappointed? What if I'm not the mother he remembers? That's impossible. Jasmine squeezed her hand. You're exactly the mother he remembers. The mother who loved him. The mother who taught him to be kind. That hasn't changed. Zara took Margaret's other hand. We're all here with you, Mrs. Reynolds. You're not alone. At exactly 6 p.m., a black sedan pulled up in front of the diner. The door opened. A man stepped out, tall, over 6 feet, dark coat, clean-shaven. His hair was dark with streaks of gray at the temples. He stood there for a moment, looking at the diner, at the flowers in the window, at the banner,
at the people standing outside in the cold, waiting. And then he looked through the glass and saw his mother. He froze. For 10 seconds he didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared. Margaret stood up slowly, her hands gripping the table for support. Mother and son looked at each other through the window. 5 years of grief and loss, and desperate searching in a single moment. Then Christopher moved. He walked to the door and pushed it open. The bell chimed, the same bell that had rung when Kevin asked Margaret to leave yesterday. But this time, everything was different. Christopher stood in the doorway. Margaret stood by the table. The diner was silent, except for the sound of their breathing. "Mom?" Christopher's voice cracked. "Is it really you?" Margaret's face crumpled. "Christopher, my baby, my boy." Christopher crossed the diner in 4 long strides. He wrapped his arms around his mother. Margaret was tiny against him. She had to stand on her toes to reach up. He bent down, pulling her close, and they held each other like they were afraid to let go. And then they both started crying, deep wrenching sobs that shook both their bodies. Christopher buried his face in his mother's hair. Margaret clutched his coat like she'd never let go again. "I'm sorry," Christopher choked out. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I looked everywhere. I looked for years. I should have found you sooner. I should have." "No, no, no." Margaret was sobbing too hard to speak clearly. "This is my fault. I let you think I was dead. I let you mourn me. 5 years, Christopher. 5 years you suffered because I couldn't find you. It doesn't matter." Christopher pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands cupping her cheeks. "None of that matters now. You're here. You're alive. That's all that matters." He looked at her, really looked at her, at the lines that hadn't been there before, the white hair that had been only gray, the thinness of her frame. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "You're so beautiful, Mom." Margaret laughed through her tears. "I'm old and worn out. You're my mother. You're perfect." Around them, everyone in the diner was crying. Kevin stood behind the counter with his apron pressed to his face. Sharon was openly weeping. Mrs. Thompson dabbed her eyes with the scarf she'd brought. Christopher helped Margaret sit down, then sat beside her, still holding her hand, like he was afraid she'd disappear. "Mom," he said, his voice shaking, Do you remember the first time I tried to make pancakes for you? I was 9, and you burned them so badly the smoke alarm went off." Margaret was smiling now, through her tears. "And you were so scared your father would be angry. But he just laughed and said, 'At least you tried. You remember everything. Everything, sweetheart. Every moment with you. I never forgot.'" Christopher started crying again. He laid his head on his mother's shoulder, and she stroked his hair like she used to when he was small. After a moment, Sharon appeared with a plate of banana pancakes and a cup of black coffee. She set them down on the table silently, then backed away, tears streaming down her face. Christopher stared at the plate. "Sunday magic," he whispered. Margaret nodded. "Sunday magic." They ate together, neither letting go of the other's hand. One-handed, awkward, but neither willing to break contact. Kevin brought more coffee. Mrs. Thompson brought her scarf and draped it around Margaret's shoulders. Other customers, people who'd been in the diner yesterday, people who'd looked away, came up to apologize, to offer congratulations, to witness the miracle. After they'd eaten, Christopher looked around the diner, his eyes landing on Jasmine. "You're Jasmine Washington." Jasmine stood up, nervous. Christopher walked over to her, and then to everyone's shock, he dropped to his knees in front of her. "Mr. Reynolds," Jasmine started, but he grabbed her hands. "You saved my mother's life. You gave me back the person I love most in the world. You gave me a second chance I never thought I'd have." "I just bought soup," Jasmine said, crying. "You did so much more than that." Christopher looked up at her, this powerful CEO, kneeling on a diner floor. "You saw my mother, when everyone else looked away. You stopped. You cared. You gave everything you had." Margaret spoke up from the table. "Christopher, Jasmine used her last $20. She was about to lose her home. Her sister can't go to college, but she chose to help me anyway." Christopher's face changed. "You were about to lose your home." Jasmine tried to pull her hands away, embarrassed. "It doesn't matter. It's the most important thing in the world." Christopher stood up, still holding her hands. Do you know what true kindness is? It's not giving when you have plenty. It's giving when you have nothing left to give. That's what you did. He looked around at everyone in the diner. My mother taught me that every person matters, especially the ones the world tries to ignore. Jasmine Washington understood that lesson better than anyone. She saw a person in need, and she helped. No questions, no hesitation, just pure, simple kindness. He turned back to Jasmine. And I'm going to make sure that kindness is rewarded. Christopher asked Jasmine and Zara to sit down. Margaret sat beside them, still holding Jasmine's hand. Tell me about your situation, Christopher said. Everything. I want to know. So Jasmine told him about Mama's touch, about Grandma Rosa dying in the ER, about the $80,000 in hospital bills, about Mr. Henderson and the eviction notice, about making $20 a day and needing $2,800 in 3 days, about Zara's scholarship rejection. Christopher listened to every word, his jaw tight, his eyes intense. When Jasmine finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I want to help, not as charity, as repayment, as gratitude for what you did for my mother. You already helped, Jasmine said. The money you sent, that was just the beginning. Christopher pulled out his phone. Reynolds and Partners is expanding. We're opening an office here in Portland. We're going to build 300 units of affordable housing in the next 2 years. He looked at Jasmine. I want Mama's Touch to be our primary contractor for textiles. We'll need curtains, linens, upholstery for 300 apartments. And more importantly, I want you to create a training program. Teach sewing and alterations to people who are homeless, unemployed, struggling. Give them skills they can use to support themselves. Jasmine's mouth opened, but no sound came out. A 5-year contract, Christopher continued, worth $500,000. That should cover rent, expansion, equipment, salaries for instructors, and stipends for students.
500,000. Jasmine couldn't breathe. And Zara. Christopher turned to her sister. You're going to receive the Margaret Reynolds Memorial Scholarship, full tuition, room and board, books, everything you need for 4 years at any university in Oregon. Zara burst into tears. She threw her arms around Jasmine. Sis, oh my God, sis, I can't. Jasmine was crying now too. I can't accept this. It's too much. You can, and you will. Christopher's voice was firm. Because you gave me my mother back. You gave me hope. You showed me that people still care about each other, that kindness still exists in this world. Margaret squeezed Jasmine's hand. Take it, sweetheart. You've earned it. You saved my life. Let my son save yours. Around them the diner erupted in applause. Kevin was clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. Sharon was crying and cheering at the same time. Mrs. Thompson was on her feet, whistling. And Jasmine just sat there, holding her sister, crying into Zara's shoulder, unable to believe that any of this was real. Thank you, she finally managed to say. Thank you so much. Christopher smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made him look just like his mother. No, he said. Thank you, for seeing someone who needed help, for stopping when everyone else walked by, for being the kind of person this world desperately needs. He raised his coffee cup, to kindness, to second chances, to family, both the one we're born with and the one we choose. Everyone in the diner raised their cups, to kindness. And outside the snow began to fall again, soft and gentle, covering the world in white. But inside Snowflake Diner, in that circle of warmth and light, 5 lives had been changed forever. All because one person refused to look away. All because one person chose to care. Christopher stayed in Portland for a week. He booked a suite at the Grand Hotel and insisted Margaret stay with him. I'm not letting you out of my sight, he said, his arm around her shoulders. Not for 5 seconds. Not ever again. He took her to doctors. A general practitioner, a cardiologist, a specialist for her arthritis. After years of sleeping on the streets, he needed to know she was okay. The doctor's report was better than anyone expected. Mrs. Reynolds is malnourished and her joints show signs of wear, the doctor said. But there's nothing seriously wrong. With proper care, regular meals and medication for her arthritis, she could live another 20 years. Christopher cried when he heard that. 20 more years with his mother. 20 years he'd thought were lost forever. Every day he walked with Margaret through the snow-covered streets of Portland. She showed him her old elementary school, now converted into apartments. The house where she and George had raised him, now painted a different color, with different people living inside. The church where she sometimes got meals. "I don't regret it," Margaret said one afternoon as they walked past Snowflake Diner. "These 5 years, if I hadn't lost everything, I never would have met Jasmine. And she," Margaret looked at her son, "she reminded me what it means to be human, what it means to matter." Christopher squeezed her hand. "She reminded me too." On his 5th night in Portland, Christopher invited Jasmine and Zara to dinner at the hotel restaurant. Zara stared wide-eyed at the white tablecloths, the crystal glasses, the menu with no prices. Jasmine felt completely out of place in her nicest dress, one of Grandma Rosa's old ones, faded but clean. "Thank you for coming," Christopher said as they sat down. "Miss Washington, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done." "You already have," Jasmine said quietly. "You showed me that miracles are real." Christopher shook his head. "No, you don't understand. You didn't just give me back my mother. You gave me back my faith in humanity. For 5 years I've been angry at the universe, at myself, at everyone who didn't help her. But you helped. When you had every reason not to, you helped. That changes everything." He pulled out a folder and set it on the table. "I've been looking into your situation, your shop, your grandmother's legacy, the eviction notice." Jasmine stiffened. "Mr. Reynolds, I appreciate the money you sent, but I don't need charity." "Good." Christopher smiled. "Because I'm not offering charity, I'm offering an opportunity." He opened the folder. Inside were architectural drawings and business plans. "Reynolds and Partners is launching a new project here in Portland, Community Hub. It's a space for small businesses, local entrepreneurs, people who need a chance but can't afford commercial rent." He pointed to one of the drawings. "I want Mama's Touch to be the anchor tenant. 5 years rent-free. After that, reduced rent based on income." Jasmine stared at the papers. I don't understand, but that's not all." Christopher's eyes were bright now, excited. "I want you to expand. Create a training program. Teach sewing and alterations to people who are homeless, unemployed, struggling. Give them skills they can use to support themselves." He slid another document across the table. "Reynolds and Partners will fund the entire program. Equipment, supplies, stipends for students. We'll renovate a 5,000 square foot space, 20 industrial sewing machines, a classroom area, everything you need. You want me to open a school. I want you to start a movement," Christopher said. "The way your grandmother did with you. The way you did with my mother. I want you to take broken people and help them put themselves back together, one stitch at a time." Margaret reached across the table and took Jasmine's hand. "Will you do it, dear, for people like me, for everyone who's been invisible?" Jasmine looked at Zara, who was crying, then at Margaret, whose eyes were full of hope, then at Christopher, who believed in her more than she believed in herself. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll do it." Christopher turned to Zara. "And you? I spoke with the University of Oregon. They've agreed to review your application again, with a letter of recommendation from me." Zara's eyes went wide. "But I didn't have the GPA." "You have something more important than a GPA." Christopher smiled. "You have character. You have a sister who would sacrifice everything for you. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is the Margaret Reynolds Memorial Scholarship. Full tuition, room and board, books, everything you need for 4 years." Zara's hands shook as she took the envelope. She looked at Jasmine, then burst into tears and threw her arms around Christopher. Thank you so much. I won't let you down, I promise. I'll work hard and make everyone proud." "I know you will," Christopher said gently. "Now go change the world." The next day, Christopher met with Mr. William Henderson at Mama's Touch. Jasmine stood behind the counter, nervous, as the two men talked. Christopher was all business, cool, professional, intimidating. "Mr. Henderson, I understand you own this property." Henderson nodded, eyeing Christopher's expensive suit. "I do, and Miss Washington is 4 months behind on rent. I have every right to." "How much does she owe?" $7,200. Plus this month makes. I'll write you a check for $10,000 right now." Christopher pulled out his checkbook. "That covers everything she owes. plus 3 months in advance. In exchange, you agree to a new lease. 5 years, fixed rent, no increases. Henderson's eyes went wide. Yes, of course. Christopher wrote the check and handed it over. Then he looked at Henderson with cold eyes. And Mr. Henderson, Miss Washington is going to be very successful. Her business is going to grow. And when it does, I want you to remember that you tried to kick her out when she was down. I want you to remember that you showed no mercy. Henderson's face went red. He took the check and left without another word. After he was gone, Jasmine sat down on the floor of the shop and cried. Not sad tears, relief tears, joy tears. Christopher knelt beside her. You're going to be okay now, better than okay. You're going to thrive. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, just promise me one thing. Anything. Promise me you'll remember this feeling, this moment, and when you see someone else struggling, someone else who's invisible, you'll stop. You'll help, just like you helped my mother. Jasmine wiped her eyes and nodded. I promise. 3 days later, Christopher held a press conference at the Grand Hotel. He announced the Portland expansion of Reynolds and Partners, the 300 units of affordable housing, the partnership with Mama's Touch, and he told the story. The story of a young woman who used her last $20 to buy soup for a homeless stranger. The story of a son who'd been searching for his mother for 5 years. The story of a miracle that happened because one person chose to care. The local news picked it up. Then the national news. Within 24 hours, #Mama's Touch miracle was trending on social media. Donations poured in to the Margaret's Light Foundation, to Mama's Touch, to homeless shelters across Portland. Kevin and Sharon at Snowflake Diner created a pay-it-forward program. Customers could buy meals in advance for people who couldn't afford them. The corner table where Margaret had sat, where this whole thing started, was marked with a small brass plaque. The kindness table reserved for those in need. And Jasmine just tried to keep up with everything that was happening. Reporters wanted interviews. The mayor wanted to give her an award. Strangers stopped her on the street to shake her hand. But the moment that meant the most came a week later. She was at the shop, measuring fabric when the door opened. Margaret walked in with Christopher beside her. We're leaving tomorrow, Margaret said. Christopher's taking me back to Massachusetts. To live with him. Jasmine's heart sank. Oh, of course, you should be with your son. But I'll be back, Margaret said quickly. Every month to volunteer at the center, to help teach the students. If you'll have me, of course I'll have you. Jasmine hugged her. You're part of this. You're part of everything. Christopher handed Jasmine a business card. My personal number. Call anytime, day or night, for anything. You're family now, Jasmine. You and Zara both. Jasmine looked at the card, then at Christopher, then at Margaret. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Margaret said, taking Jasmine's hands. You saw me, really saw me, when I was invisible to everyone else. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. She pulled Jasmine into a hug. Thank you, Angel. Thank you for giving me my life back. Jasmine hugged her tight, crying. Thank you for giving me hope back. They stood there for a long moment, two women who'd found each other in the darkness and pulled each other into the light. And outside the world kept turning. But inside Mama's Touch, everything had changed. Everything was possible now. Everything was new. 1 year later, the sign above the door read, Mama's Touch Community Center, where every stitch builds hope. The grand opening was on a Saturday in December. Jasmine stood in the doorway of the new space, barely able to believe it was real. 5,000 square feet, 20 industrial sewing machines arranged in neat rows, a classroom area with desks and a smart board, a showroom for finished work, large windows that let in natural light, and everywhere, people. 60 students had enrolled in the first class. 40 of them were homeless or recently unemployed. 20 were refugees learning English through sewing. 10 were teenagers from low-income families. The first graduation ceremony was scheduled for tonight. Jasmine walked through the space, checking last-minute details. Margaret was at the front, adjusting the banner. Zara was home from college for the weekend, helping set up chairs. And Christopher had flown in from Massachusetts with his entire executive team. It's beautiful, he said, walking up beside Jasmine. My mother would be so proud. Your mother is here, Jasmine pointed. Margaret was laughing with one of the students, a 68-year-old woman named Sarah Johnson who'd been homeless for 10 years. I meant my grandmother, Christopher said. Rosa. She started all this, everything we're doing, it's her legacy. Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. Every stitch is an act of hope. Every stitch is an act of hope. Christopher repeated. At 6 p.m., the ceremony began. 25 students walked across the makeshift stage to receive their certificates. Each one wore an outfit they'd made themselves, proof of their new skills. Sarah Johnson was the last to walk. She moved slowly, arthritis making each step painful, but she held her head high. When she reached the podium, she turned to face the audience. A year ago I was nobody, she said, her voice shaking. I was that homeless woman sleeping on benches. I was invisible. People looked through me, not at me. She paused, wiping her eyes. But Jasmine saw me. She taught me to sew. She gave me skills. She gave me dignity. And now I'm not homeless woman's anymore. I'm Sarah Johnson, seamstress. The audience erupted in applause. Jasmine, sitting in the front row between Margaret and Zara, couldn't stop crying. Christopher stood and announced that each graduate would receive a $500 toolkit to start their own business. My mother taught me that everyone matters, he said, especially those the world tries to ignore. Sarah, you matter, all of you matter, and we're going to make sure the world knows it. More applause, more tears. After the ceremony, there was a reception. People mingled, ate cookies, took photos. Jasmine stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The snow was falling again, soft, gentle flakes that caught the light from the street lamps. She thought about a year ago, standing in this exact spot, broken and desperate, $743 in her pocket, 3 days until eviction, no hope left. And then she'd seen Margaret, one choice, one act of kindness, and everything changed. Sis, Jasmine turned. Zara stood in the doorway, bundled in a warm coat, a real coat, not a thin jacket, held together with safety pins. You okay? Yeah, Jasmine smiled. Just thinking. About what? About how 1 year can change everything. Zara came and stood beside her, looking out at the snow. You know what my professor said last week, in Social Work 101. What? She said. Systems don't change because of policies, they change because of people. One person who refuses to accept that things have to be this way. Zara looked at her sister. That's you, sis. You refused to accept it, and you changed everything. Jasmine shook her head. I just bought soup. No. Zara grabbed her hand. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. Even when you had nothing. Even when it cost you everything. That's not just soup. That's revolutionary. At 8 p.m., Jasmine was helping clean up when she looked out the window. An old man was shuffling past. His coat was too thin. His shoulders hunched against the cold. Jasmine watched him for a moment. Then she grabbed her coat. Where are you going? Zara asked. Jasmine smiled. To do what we do. She walked outside into the snow. The old man had stopped at the corner, trying to get warm under a broken street light. Excuse me, sir. The man turned, surprised, wary. Jasmine held up 2 to-go containers from the reception. Would you mind if I sat with you for a bit? I really hate eating alone. The old man stared at her, his eyes pale gray, tired, filled with tears. You'd do that, for me? Of course, Jasmine smiled. Come on, let's get you warm. She led him back toward the community center, where the lights were still on, where warmth and food and kindness waited. Zara stood in the doorway, watching her sister walk away with a stranger who needed help, and she smiled. Because she knew the cycle would continue, the kindness would spread, the hope would multiply. Inside the community center, Margaret stood with Christopher, watching through the window. That girl, Margaret said softly, she's an angel, a real angel. No, Christopher said, she's better than an angel, she's human, and she chooses to be kind, every single day. That's harder, that's braver. Margaret squeezed her son's hand. Your grandmother would be so proud. Both grandmothers, Christopher said. Rosa and Mom, they're both here. In everything Jasmine does. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, Jasmine brought the old man in from the cold,
And somewhere beyond the visible world, Grandma Rosa smiled. Because that's what love does. It doesn't just save one person. It ripples outward, touching everyone it meets, creating waves of change that never really end. All it takes is one person willing to stop, to see, to care. All it takes is 2 bowls of soup and a heart brave enough to give them away. Kindness costs nothing, but means everything. Pass it on.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.